David, Goliath, faced the fear. I love this picture because it's so epic, and I had to choose this music that was so epic because when you walked in here, I wanted you to feel like you could conquer the world. So I love the story of David because despite being ridiculed by his older brothers and underestimated by his father, he overcomes with persistence again and again, over and over. He even overcomes his own shortcomings again and again. You'd think he'd have a fear of failure, right? Yeah. But he didn't. David had to face himself, who he was. He was a shepherd boy. He was the youngest of all his brothers. He was a musician and a poet. He had to face a bear and a lion, what he was capable of, what his strengths were, what his weaknesses were. Number 3, he had to face his family, what their opinion of him was, what they thought he was capable of. And number 4, he had to face Goliath. Was his fear of Goliath bigger than his love for God? So what's your Goliath? I want you to think about that today, this morning, what your Goliath is. What is that big thing that you're looking up to and you don't think it's probably possible? Maybe you don't think you're strong enough. But what is your Goliath? And how will you face that fear? Because there's always going to be a Goliath in your life. And we have all these dreams, but sometimes this fear gets in the way. This fear of uncertainty. Sometimes we get life in the way. So I wonder what would happen if we ever faced those fears head on. I wonder if we'd be able to change the world. I wonder if we'd be able to change our community or even just the friends around us. Would we be able to do that? So let's start with 1. David had to face himself. David was this shepherd, the youngest of his family. He had to watch the stinky, smelly, not so smart sheep. Not so smart sheep. Compare that with his big, hairy, smelly, stinky brothers, who are the epic warriors. Remember, this is at a time where they're in this epic battle with the Philistines. And the closest thing that David ever got to the battle was probably taking cheese sandwiches to his brothers. He was ready. He was a good-looking, this is the worst, musician. He was a musician. So David would split his time between playing music for King Saul. I think you remember he had some issues, so he would bring David in to play music to kind of calm him down. And then David would go home and feed the sheep, watch the sheep. And then he would give food to his brothers. So he spent his time doing these 3 minuscule little things that he thought maybe wasn't doing too much. So maybe you're the creative person in the family who writes music or is an artist, or you're just the creative, brainy person and no one quite understands you and quite gets you. Maybe that's who you are. And maybe you're like David. His own dad probably didn't think that he could have gone up and been a soldier. Maybe David can only do the sandwiches and the sheep. And his dad didn't even think he could be more than a shepherd boy, write songs, and wait tables on the side. Do you know anybody like that? Maybe you don't think your job is too important right now. Maybe you feel like you could be doing something so much bigger. There is something in your heart that has been there for a while for some of you, and you know what it is. And I want you to pretend like no one else is looking at you and no one else is listening. We're going to scream just that loud at the same time and say what it is I've been called to do. If you don't know what you want to do, that's okay. Just say, I want to change the world. Okay? I know that's kind of long. I want to change the world. Right? You can, no matter how old you are. Yes?
Could it be like a sport or something?
It can be a sport. You know what? Doing stuff for God isn't just in ministry. It's doing stuff that God has given you a talent for. Some people that's going to be singing. Some people that's going to be having a mic. But some people that's going to be business. Some people that's going to be sports. Some people that's going to be dance. Some people that's going to be singing or anything. All right. Do you have it in your head?
Yeah.
You know what it is? 1, 2, 3. Arnold! That was awesome. David had to face a bear and a lion. How many of you have faced a bear and a lion? No, I didn't think so. He had to face what he was capable of and what his strengths were and what his weaknesses were. But here's the truth of the matter. He was right where God wanted him. So look at his brothers, what they were doing. Look at David and what he was doing. He was exactly where he needed to be at that moment in his life. So maybe, what grade are you in? 5th? So maybe you're in 5th grade right now. But one day, you're going to be 18 years old, and you're going to be kicking that soccer ball way across the field, okay? Getting a scholarship. So whatever dream you have, it's right where God needs you to be right now, no matter what it is. Are you battling any lions and bears right now? That aren't, metaphorically speaking, that aren't exactly what you thought you would be facing because you'd rather maybe do something else right now? What are some things that you're facing right now? I want to hear. What?
How to curve.
How to curve. That's a good one. Anybody else? What are some obstacles? Yes? School. Are you obedient right where you're at right now, where God has you? I think for some of you, that means being faithful in what God has given you right now. Faithful at your school, faithful at your job, faithful at your ministry. And for some of you, it's actually stepping out and taking that next step because God's been talking to you for a while about it. And to step out in faith sometimes is the biggest fear you could possibly face. But when you step out, you're going to fly, okay? God's got your back. He cares about you. You can cast all these things on him because he does care for you. He hasn't left you. He still believes in you. God is bigger than anyone's opinion, bigger than our own weaknesses, bigger than our inadequacies, bigger than the Goliath that's staring you down. On the count of 3, I want us to think of our weaknesses and inadequacies. 1, 2, 3. Face your fear.